bows and gratitude to these guys. Oh, excuse me. Okay. Okay, so good morning, everybody, and good evening for those in Europe. And I don't know if there's middle of the night or wee hours for anybody, but if so, you're most welcome. And thank you for joining us, everybody. Johanna, could you just let me know that I'm at a good volume and clear, if I am? I can't see.
Sounds good, Henry.
Okay, thanks. Excellent. Lovely. So yeah, what are we up to? Well, we're in the third of these 4 retreats that I've called original love retreats. Where this third one is on, essentially it's on the deepening and ripening, so to speak, of basic present moment awareness practice or mindfulness that can sort of gradually, and of course sometimes suddenly, but bit by bit, more consistently develop into a state of mind, of awareness, of various things actually, known as samadhi. It's got a range of meanings, a whole spectrum, really, we could say, of meanings. And it's somehow important in meditation practice, and trying to look at why it is, what it is. So we're going to get a little bit more into that. What are its various flavors? It's not just one phenomenon. It's a range of things, but maybe there are some common themes. And thirdly, how does it come about? So why is it valuable? What is it? And how does it come about? And I think, honestly, somebody asked on the first day after I'd given the talk, somebody said in a question, well, what is it? Like I hadn't really addressed that. And that's probably true. And I realized that I have a little hesitation about getting too much into what it is. And for the following reason, it's possible to get a kind of performance anxiety about our meditation. In fact, it's not just possible, it's quite common. If it's not going well, we think we're not doing it right, and it's like, and then if it is going well, we're worried afterwards that it won't go well again. And it's quite easy to get that kind of judging mindset. And we heard yesterday a question that said it really, really nicely, like there's 2 me's, one who's judging in all kinds of ways, and that would include meditation, and another who's seems to be much more open and allowing. And that would be, that second one, whether or not that person is tasting samadhi consistently, it may not be the case. They may or they may not. It doesn't really matter. Once we're really sort of doing our mindfulness, it doesn't matter what is going on. That's the sort of key thing of true mindfulness, is that it just meets whatever is arising as it is, without thinking about whether it could be otherwise. That's almost a sort of definition, isn't it? Nearly, of mindfulness, that we're aware of how things are without even considering if they might be otherwise. And therefore, it's peaceful. Okay. So that would be a sort of, I mean, in a way, I've just said the how of developing samadhi, actually, is to meet things as they are. I mean, while we're sitting, of course, in the end, it doesn't have to only be sitting. Well, not just in the end, throughout our life of practice, it develops more and more in the course of normal activities, but only ever through sort of meeting things as they are, never through wishing things were otherwise or even thinking they might be otherwise, just taking it as it is. That's always how it is. So when, if, for example, performance anxiety does come up, or any other kind of anxiety, we welcome it. And of course, that's not necessarily so easy, because anxiety is really uncomfortable. And our first instinct generally is to try to avoid it by various means. But actually, if we can develop the kind of awareness that can say everything is welcome, including unpleasant things, and mean it, so we really know what it is to welcome things we'd rather not have happen, including just emotional states in meditation, well, that is the way that our practice deepens. I think it's simply that is the way it deepens. So just to recap, what's the point of these retreats that Henry's called original love? The point is, without getting into the title right now, the point is that if, as can happen, we have too exclusive a focus on awakening, and it can especially happen, I think, in worlds where we do things like koan study that sort of really can't get going without awakening. Awakening is their reason for existing. So if we have too exclusive a focus on awakening, we can miss the most important thing really in a meditation practice, which is the release of psychological material, the developing of a larger capacity for being who we are, you could say. Now, it's true that awakening is about a sort of massively expanded sense of who we are, but there's also a really important growth and what's traditionally called purification process, which is actually not about that. It's about becoming a more whole and settled and inclusive human being as a human being. And that means letting psychological material arise and release itself through allowing it. And, narrow pursuit of awakening isn't doing that, frankly. So that's one reason. The second reason is that, again, awakening is elusive. It's not predictable. It's really not wise to aim for it, because who knows? Aiming for it tends to push it away anyway. So what are we going to do if we're not aiming for it, but recognizing it's a possibility? Well, the answer is we're going to find the great enriching possibilities of being still and quiet, and that becoming enough. In other words, we simply don't need awakening in order for our meditation practice to be deeply, deeply rewarding and helpful. Helpful in what ways? Well, that's the bigger picture. And the two words that spring up basically are becoming wiser, let's hope, and kinder, let's also hope. In the old formulation, wisdom and compassion. Maybe in the terms of these retreats, original, meaning getting back to the origin of things, and love, meaning how as the origin, so to speak, becomes clearer to us through practice, more and more and more we find an inescapable interconnectedness, interdependence of all things that doesn't leave us out. Therefore, love is an appropriate term, and actually original love. At the bottom of things, there's love. It's not inappropriate way to put it. And please, let's remember, no goals. Please forget awakening. Let's look at this samadhi thing, and let's look at it not as a goal. Let's look at it as something that can just develop in a sort of gentle, kind way through our practice. So what is it? Well, it means originally the term is something like everything held together. So it's sometimes called unification of mind. It's sometimes called unification of mind and body. Sometimes unification of mind and body and heart. Somehow a sense of things being more whole, of our minds being less divided, less even divided against themselves, like different component parts, not quite agreeing on the here and now. And we can taste this through practice. It just comes at times. There's a marvelous sense of we're unified in our experience. And this, again, I'm not talking about, profound, sudden flashes of oneness or something. I'm not talking about that. Just a sense of wholeness, of like being wholly committed and engaged, wholehearted. So, I want to come at this now with some, non-formal practice perspectives. This is a kind of experience known to psychology. So an obvious place to turn is Csikszentmihalyi. Many of you will know of his pioneering work in Chicago, I guess, in the 70s and 80s, I think, and maybe on flow states, as he called them. And he says, I'm going to quote a little bit from his book, Finding Flow. He sees flow states as really important for our well-being. He says, in everyday life, it's rare for the different contents of experience to be in synchrony with each other. At work, my attention might be focused because the boss gave me a job to do that requires it. But this particular job is not one I ordinarily would want to do, so I'm not very motivated. At the same time, I'm distracted by feelings of anxiety about my teenage child's erratic behavior. So while part of my mind, he's giving an example, normal. So while part of my mind is concentrated on the task, I'm not completely involved in it. It's not that my mind is in total chaos, but there's quite a bit of entropy in my consciousness. Thoughts, emotions, and intentions come into focus, then disappear. So let's consider some alternatives. Imagine, for example, that you're skiing. I guess Csikszentmihalyi, maybe he liked to ski. He says, imagine you're skiing down a slope and your full attention is focused on the movements of your body, the position of the skis, the air whistling past your face, and the snow-shrouded trees running by. There's no room in your awareness for conflicts or contradictions. You know that a distracting thought might get you buried face down in the snow. And who wants to get distracted? The run is so perfect that all you want is for it to last forever. If skiing doesn't mean much to you, substitute your favorite activity. Could be singing in a choir, programming a computer, dancing, playing bridge, reading a good book. Or if you love your job, as many people do, it could be when you're getting immersed in a complicated surgical operation or a close business deal. Or this complete immersion in the activity might occur in a social interaction, as when good friends talk with each other, or when a mother plays with her baby. What is common to such moments is that consciousness is full of experiences, and these experiences are in harmony with each other. These exceptional moments are what I have called flow experiences. The metaphor of flow is one that many people have used to describe the sense of effortless action they feel in moments that stand out as the best in their lives. Athletes call it being in the zone. Religious mystics as being in ecstasy. Artists and musicians as aesthetic rapture. Athletes, mystics, and artists do very different things when they reach flow, yet their descriptions of the experience are remarkably similar. So, as a possible starting point, I'm offering the idea that samadhi is something to do with this kind of flow state. Flow tends to occur when a person faces a clear set of goals that require appropriate responses. It's easy to enter flow in games such as chess, tennis, or poker because they have goals and rules for action that make it possible for the player to act without questioning what should be done. So there's an interesting, isn't there, side reflection on meditation. We with mindfulness practice, we kind of know the protocol. There are protocols. If your mind is distracted, start noting that. You can note it as thinking. Noticing and even labeling in your mind. Thinking, just recognizing thinking's going on. Or you could use the filing techniques, the various ones, past, present, future, to file thoughts, just acknowledging that they're there and filing them. It's simple. Or you could use the methods that I love, which Shinzen Young has codified, but they're not originally his, of recognizing that thinking consists of talk in the mind and of image in the mind, either or both. And just recognizing that that's going on. I'm hearing in, hear in, because it's internal talk. Or I'm seeing in, because it's internal image. Knowing what's going on, that's all we have to do. Mindfulness is not saying you must have a certain kind of experience. It's not saying that. It's saying, can we just try to be aware of the experience we are having? And no more than that. That is enough. So that's protocol. That's rules. We're not playing a game. In some much bigger perspective, we kind of are, but we're not. We're sitting down and tracking our experience. When we're not thinking what's going on, well, probably there's some body sensation. It could include or be the breath primarily. There's probably some auditory input, sounds around us, however soft. They're probably there. And there may be some visual, external visual, If we're sitting with a koan, we've got the little sound of the koan. If it's one of these early koans, like Mu, which we had such a beautiful talk on yesterday from Valerie, Mu. That's what we're experiencing. The sound in the mind, and maybe some trace sensation in the body, perhaps a sense of mu as a little sort of vibratory package descending through the chest down into the belly toward the hara, that energy center deep in the belly. Mu. You might feel this sort of like an opening of a channel down the middle of the body. Mu. And mu gathering down in that belly zone. Mu. For example, you might feel that. So again, protocol, pay attention to what we're experiencing here and now. So when we're sitting, almost like the game of chess that he just referenced, Csikszentmihalyi just referenced, almost like that, it's a fairly confined set of circumstances with, as we get, more used to it, we realize there are kind of certain kinds of experience only really that are going on. Even in great emotional turmoil, there's emotion showing up as body sensation, usually in the chest or solar plexus. And there's thoughts showing up as talk and image. And emotional turmoil is the most challenging thing to sit with. It gets easier in all other categories, really, except perhaps strong physical pain, which often brings emotional aspect with it as well. So that's what we do. Flow tends to occur, he goes on, when people's skills are fully involved in overcoming a challenge that is just about manageable. Optimal experiences usually involve a fine balance between one's ability to act and the available opportunities for action. If challenges are too high, we get frustrated, then worried, and eventually anxious. If challenges are too low relative to our skills, we get relaxed, then bored. If both challenges and skills are perceived to be low, we may get to feel apathetic. But when high challenges are matched with high skills, then the deep involvement that sets flow apart from ordinary life is likely to occur. Okay, so that's all on one side. And, obviously we are all of us are developing skills. We're learning and we're finding different ways of handling, being with ourselves, different ways of being who we are, different ways of being, different ways of handling being is kind of what I want to say. So samadhi, is a sort of evolution of our practice. It's part of our deepening awareness practice. It becomes easier and more fulfilling when samadhi is developing. We drop into another gear. Okay. Another way of looking at it is sort of, why is it helpful then? Well, simply put, it can be very motivating because it feels good. It makes us want to practice more. It makes us realize that there are other ways that we can experience being alive. So it expands our sense of life and who we are. It can show us that we need much less than we might think. In fact, Csikszentmihalyi goes on to discuss, why is it that some people have far less interest in material gain and renown. And he finds that they tend to be people who find flow commonly in their life. He has a name for it, the Autotelic Personality. An autotelic person needs few material possessions and little entertainment, comfort, power, or fame, because so much of what she or he does is already rewarding. Because such persons experience flow in work, in family life, when interacting with people, when eating, and even when alone, with nothing to do, they are less dependent on external rewards. They are more autonomous and independent because they cannot be easily manipulated with threats or rewards from the outside. At the same time, they are more involved with everything around them because they're fully immersed in the current of life. By the way, autotelic means doing something for its own sake. Exotelic is doing things for the sake of rewards. So when we are tasting samadhi, we've become autotelic. It has its own fulfillment. We are intrinsically fulfilled at those times. This moment is enough as it is. Another reason that samadhi is valuable is that it's actually a foretaste of awakening. It's a way of having some kind of little nibble, little appetizer, without having to go through a sort of full-blown awakening experience. Why so? Well, simply put, because there's less self. There's less self. I'm going to quote now from quite a good book that picks up really on flow, to re-examining them with an acronym STER, states that are S for selfless, T for timeless, E for effortless, and R for rich or intrinsically rich. This is by Stephen Kotler and Jamie Wheel, called Stealing Fire. It's kind of a popularly written in terms of style. It has some very good points. And they say, so when do we experience a non-ordinary state, one of these STER states, that gives us access to something more? When we do, we feel it first as something less, and that something is missing, namely us. A sense that there's less of us there. And the science of this is called Transient Hypofrontality. Okay, so this is getting into the neuroscience. Transient means temporary, hypo means less than normal, and frontality refers to the prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain that generates our sense of self. During transient hypofrontality, because large swatches of the prefrontal cortex turn off, our inner critic comes offline. They were talking about the self as primarily a critic, but of course that's not quite the only way. And they go on. The benefits of selflessness go beyond silencing the inner critic. When free from the confines of our normal identity, we're able to look at life and the often repetitive stories we tell about it with fresh eyes. So less self, less sense of time pressure. They talk about time poverty as a sort of pervasive problem in modern society. And non-ordinary states, again, provide relief from this. Our sense of time, in fact, is not localized in the brain like, say, vision, which is mostly in the occipital lobes. Instead, time is a distributed perception calculated all over the brain, calculated more specifically all over the prefrontal cortex. During hypofrontality, the prefrontal cortex being offline inhibits our performing time calculation. Without the ability to separate past from present from future, we're plunged into an elongated present, what researchers describe as the deep now. So there's more on it. The deep now is a beautiful way of putting it. And further, this effortlessness, why do athletes, extreme athletes, routinely risk life and limb for their sports? And why do spiritual ascetics willingly trade creature comforts? And then actually they quote Csikszentmihalyi. In a culture supposedly ruled by the pursuit of money, power, prestige, and pleasure, it's surprising to find people who sacrifice all those goals for no apparent reason. By finding out why they're willing to give up material rewards for the elusive experience of performing enjoyable acts, we learn something that will allow us to make everyday life more meaningful. And then the final characteristic, this richness, that actually conscious processing can handle about 120 bits of information at once. This isn't much. Listening to another person speak, so right now, I guess, takes, or maybe you're just snoozing, having a lovely nap, can take almost 60 bits. If two people are talking, that's it. We've maxed out our bandwidth. But our unconscious processing can handle billions of bits at once. So when that self-based conscious processing is in lesser activity, it opens us up to incredible richness of this very moment. And indeed, that kind of richness is another flavor of samadhi. Okay, so I'm getting towards the end, and I just want to now, if you'll allow me to just bring us back to Buddha. Buddha had a fair bit to say, because he thought that, well, at least as far as we know, that this kind of samadhi state was the key thing, really, that could lead us to awakening. He said that he has a lovely metaphor about how gold gets refined. First, it's very gross, and it's got to be cleansed and rinsed. And says that's like washing away our gross impurities, meaning our harmful conduct. Then the gold gets melted and smelted, and it's still got impurities in it. And that's like the cleansing ourselves of the impurities that are less gross, like our sensual thoughts, thoughts of ill will, thoughts of harming. And then the gold gets refined even more to the point where it can start to be worked. And that's when we're abandoning things like thoughts of good reputation and gain. And then when the practitioner has abandoned these, there still remain thoughts about the teaching. That concentration is not yet peaceful and sublime. It has not attained to full tranquility, nor has it achieved mental unification. It is still maintained by strenuous suppression of defilements. But a time comes when the practitioner's mind is inwardly steadied, composed, unified, and concentrated. That concentration is then calm and refined. It has attained to full tranquility and achieved mental unification. So then, if the practitioner wishes, they can, by the destruction of the taints and by wishing to achieve liberation by wisdom, they can achieve the capacity of realizing wisdom by direct knowledge whenever the necessary conditions obtain. So this samadhi has that possibility of bringing us to see things as they really are. He says elsewhere, develop samadhi practitioners. One who is concentrated sees things as they really are. And to see things as they really are is the work of wisdom. And the immediate basis for this correct seeing or wisdom is samadhi, concentration. So it's samadhi that can help us not just feel good, which is really nice and valuable, and we want it, but it can help us see through what we have come to believe ourselves to be and our lives to be. We can see through, be released in a bigger kind of way. But frankly, if we're tasting samadhi, we're not going to be looking for that. Okay, so the rest of today we will be doing our practice as diligently as we can, and here and there I might give a few little pointers as we're sitting, and we'll just see how deeply we can allow whatever arises, how thoroughly we can give it space, how we can really try to come to this condition where we're not looking for things to be different, truly. Okay, thank you very much.